The New York Giants continue to find new levels of rock bottom following a 30-6 loss to the Las Vegas Raiders that saw starting quarterback Daniel Jones suffer what could be a significant knee injury. Is the Jones era done in New York? That plus the defensive dud. And where do the Giants go from here? Coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, New York Giant fans, welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Train. I'm your host. And ladies and gentlemen, oh my goodness. New York Giants losing to the Antonio Pierce-led Las Vegas Raiders 30-6. I mean, just when you think this team cannot get any lower, cannot go any worse, they find new ways to just absolutely, top the previous week, which is not saying much. And on today's show, we're going to talk about some of that, but we also need to talk about quarterback Daniel Jones, who suffered what is potentially a season-ending knee injury. So we're going to talk about Jones, and if he is finally done here in New York, then we'll talk about the defensive dud that the Giants laid in this game against the Raiders. And where do they go from here? So thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day, or if you watch on YouTube, your first watch of the day. Folks, it's a venting session. So let's just get right to it. I can't sugarcoat this. I won't sugarcoat it because I respect you guys and gals too much, your intelligence, to sit here and say, oh, all's right with the world. All is calm. Don't panic. Here's the situation here, guys. Daniel Jones, the Giants' star-crossed quarterback. He's a guy who, when he came in, first off, let me go back to when he was drafted in 2019. I thought the Giants drafting him 6th overall was too high. I thought, okay, if they're going to draft him, maybe they take him in, with the second of their 2 first-round picks that they had that year. So, that second pick, of course, being Dexter Lawrence. That's what it turned out to be. But, they brought in the new quarterback, and I said, okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's see how he does. Maybe it'll work out. And then the Giants proceeded to screw the kid up. Multiple coaching staffs, multiple systems. The offensive line has been a problem. Jones has never had a number 1 receiver. And then comes Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka. And last year, you see the Giants and Daniel Jones actually start to look like a legitimate NFL offense. And then this year comes along. He suffers a neck injury because this guy continues to play at times recklessly with his body, because I think he feels he needs to make plays when his teammates fail him. So he comes back from the neck injury, reportedly, according to The Athletic, still feeling pain in that area. All right. But able to play after he had been cleared by doctors. And he comes back and he's got Saquon Barkley now. He's got Andrew Thomas back. He's got Evan Neal back. John Michael Schmitz is back. Basically Justin Pugh is in there, who's been solid. And then Ben Bredesen moved over to right guard. He's been kind of solid. And it's just more of the same. And the bad thing here is that Daniel Jones, not only under pressure a lot in this game, but by the end of the first quarter, he goes and he suffers a non-contact knee injury, which immediately I must have gotten about at least 6 texts from doctors or retired doctors saying, oh, he tore his ACL. He's done for the year. Now, as I record this, we don't have a definitive diagnosis from the Giants. Jones obviously is going to undergo further tests when the team gets back to New York on Monday morning. The NFL Network is reporting that it does look like a significant injury. It sure did look like an ACL, just the way his knee buckled. But again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm going to leave that to the medical professionals. But here's the thing, folks. Gut feeling says Daniel Jones did rip up his knee, and he's done for the year. Now, is he done with the Giants, who just, as you guys know, signed him to the 4-year, $160 million contract in the offseason? Folks, afraid so. I mean, look, it's not all Daniel's fault. The Giants did him zero favors in terms of, giving him what he needed to succeed. But you look at quarterbacks around the league, and how many quarterbacks have the perfect setting around them? They all deal with injuries to their supporting casts, their offensive linemen. They all have, mistakes that are made. Daniel Jones, he's given his all. He's been a hard worker. He's been, a good face of the franchise. Like I said, star-crossed. But, I think we've got to just look in the mirror and just say, this guy isn't it. Not because of the injuries, which is, is a problem, but he just doesn't elevate the talent around him. And, I'm speaking again based on, granted, a small sample size in this game, this loss to the Raiders. But the Giants went the entire first quarter. Still no touchdowns by the offense. The Giants are the only team in the league to be able to claim that they have not scored an offensive touchdown in the first quarter of the game. And we are now through 9 weeks of the season. All right. So to a degree, Daniel Jones hasn't really been what we thought he would be or what we hoped he would be. And some of you are going to be probably on my YouTube channel saying, I told you so. And that's fine. If that's what makes you happy, go ahead. I chose to believe in the guy because, look, I'm not going to be one of those people that's going to sit here and find, 50 million things wrong and zero right with the players or the coaches or whatever. I tend to be an optimist, right? At the same time, I'm not blind, contrary to what some of you might think. I've had questions about Daniel Jones. Is he ever going to be able to win from the pocket? Is he going to be able to stay healthy 2 years in a row? Is he going to be able to, correct some of the deficiencies, become more than a one-read quarterback? I had questions about all that stuff, but when you see him, on that deep pass, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a first quarter deep pass where he tried to hit Jalen Hyatt, and had that ball been placed a little bit better, that would have been a touchdown, and it just wasn't. So you see little inconsistencies that start to add up, and you say to yourself, man, they just can't go on like this. They just can't. So the Giants, who as of the end of week 9 sit 4th in the NFL draft order for 2024, I truly believe that a quarterback is going to be brought in here. And, it's unfortunate for Daniel Jones. Again, he's a nice guy. I hoped he would work out, but the time's come. It's just come, that between the injuries, which aren't his fault, but nonetheless, they're a factor. It's time to consider moving on. And, I think Jones will probably be here next year because he, of the cap hit. But then again, maybe the Giants say, you know what, we'll just cut our losses and move on. Although I think they'll keep him, if they do draft a rookie quarterback, let Jones, maybe if he's healthy, that is, start the season. Kind of like what happened with Eli Manning when he was a rookie and Kurt Warner was here, and Warner kind of kept the seat warm until Eli was ready to take over. So maybe that, that's what I can see happening for the Giants. It's unfortunate, but that's where we're at right now with Daniel Jones. And, takes too long to process the mistakes. I mean, it's time to move on, guys. All right. I mean, there's my confession. It's time to move on. All right. Coming up next, the Giants laid a defensive dud against the Raiders. We'll talk a little bit about that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates, right? So that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. I myself have used LinkedIn Jobs to find aspiring writers and editors for the Giants Country site that I run over on SI's Fan Nation, and the process is not only super easy, but a big time saver. Simply add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so that you can quickly prioritize whom you'd like to interview and hire. So don't spend time sorting through endless resumes and dead end leads. Put LinkedIn Jobs to work for you today for free by visiting linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. Terms and conditions apply. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, P-Train. And folks, I really, really wish we had something better to talk about, a better football game, a better outcome. I put this on my Threads account tonight. I don't know that I can ever pick the Giants to win again this season. It's just gotten that bad. And, we talked about Daniel Jones in the last segment and how he's likely done for the year if the MRI reveals that he tore his ACL. I just don't see it getting better. I really don't. I mean, that's not necessarily a knock against Matt Barkley, who will probably be signed to the 53-man roster with Tyrod, given that Tyrod Taylor is on IR. That's not a knock against Tommy DeVito, who went out there and at least, tried. Wasn't, polished by any stretch of the imagination, but he did what he could, obviously. It's just what it is. But let's talk about the defense, which in my mind laid a dud against this Raiders team. All right. Now, coming in, you had a young quarterback in Aiden O'Connell who was completing 33.3% of his pass attempts when under pressure. So you sit there and you think to yourself, okay, the Giants are going to throw everything they got at him to rattle him. So, in the beginning, they did that. They did not get home. The Giants managed just one pressure, 0 sacks against a banged up and struggling Raiders offensive line. No interceptions. All right. They had Xavier McKinney and Adoree Jackson were bracketing Davante Adams until Adoree left the game with a concussion. All right. Just the Giants, I don't know what happened to this defense. They had been playing so well the last few weeks. The run defense, which had been, which had clamped down the last couple of weeks, holding the opponent to under 100 yards, just totally, went the opposite direction. Now, can you say it's because they traded away Leonard Williams and there was a drop-off in the talent level? I suppose you can, but then again, earlier in the season when Leonard was playing, there were times when the opponent just, ran on the Giants. Now, whether that was because the Giants gave up the run or, to defend the pass, or it just so happened that the other team got lucky, it's hard to say. But this week, you got to figure that stopping Davante Adams, the receiver, which the Giants did a halfway decent job of, and stopping Josh Jacobs, you would have figured that those would have been the two key things for the Giants defense. And they weren't able to do that. Josh Jacobs, who had run for 76 yards and 58 yards to 2 games prior to this week, ran for 125 yards today, 2 rushing touchdowns. Just not going to win when you let the other team run the ball. And, I think early on in the game when the Raiders took a 7-0 lead, they barely were coming up with third downs. I mean, they were avoiding third downs. So what was the Giants defense doing? Not much of anything. And, another thing that kind of jumped out at me, I look at the final tackle count. Whenever you have defensive backs leading your team in tackles, that means stuff's getting through the first two levels. Sure enough, for the Giants defense, the leading tackler, not Bobby Okereke, you would think, who has led the team in tackles the last few weeks, but safety Xavier McKinney with 10 tackles, 7 of which are solo. And then the second leading tackler, cornerback Deonte Banks with 7 combined tackles, 4 of which were solo. Bobby Okereke third, Micah McFadden was fourth. So again, when your defensive secondary members are the ones who are leading your team in tackles, that means the guys up front just aren't getting it done. And just, looking at this real quick, let me just see. Dexter Lawrence had 3 tackles. DJ Davidson came in. He had 2 assists. Raheem Nunez-Roches had 1 tackle. Did Ashawn Robinson get any tackles? Yeah. Okay. Ashawn Robinson had 6. 2 solo, 4 assists. So just, I don't know. I don't know what was up with the run defense. I don't know what was up with, guys getting into the second level and beyond. But the defense just did not play well. The defense they looked flat. They looked like they had no answers. I mean, it was like watching a totally different unit this week as opposed to what we had seen the last couple weeks. So that was a big problem. Situational football. We'll talk about that real quick. Let me just get to that page in the game book here. The Raiders, 5 of 14 on third down. Okay, that's not too bad. 0 of 1 on fourth down. In the red zone, however, 3 of 4, 75%. You ain't going to win very many games if you're letting your opponent convert in the red zone more than 50%. Just not happening. Now, all this, mind you, the Raiders lost the time of possession, 28:56 to 31:04. And oh, by the way, I think I saw a stat that said when the Giants lead the game time of possession, they lose every single game. So here's another instance. Just not a good showing by this Giants defense. And I don't know what happened. Was Leonard Williams missing that big of a deal? And if it is, well, too bad. You got to get used to it now because he ain't coming back. I don't know the answer. I really don't. I'm curious to hear what Wink Martindale has to say on Thursday. You kind of wish the coordinators would talk after the game, but they don't talk until Thursday. And then by then they're like, oh, that was last week. I'm focused on this week. Well, maybe they should reconsider when they let these guys talk. I don't know. But the defense, probably the biggest disappointment of this game this week. The offense was disappointing, yes, but again, you lose Daniel Jones. The offensive line just did not look good. Andrew Thomas said after the game that, he's got to get his conditioning back. He wasn't happy with his play. Oh, by the way, Evan Neal, who came back after missing 2 games with I think it was a left, or was it a right injury? It was an ankle injury. I think it was to his right ankle. He injured the other ankle. Same type of injury, so he said, or at least he said it felt the same as the first one. So he might be back on the show. This team is absolutely snake bit with injuries. And I know a lot of you asked me about injuries, and is it Ronnie Barnes? Is it this one? Is it that one? Folks, I'm working on booking a guest for the bye week. I have to wait till the bye week to do this. And we're going to talk about some of this stuff. So spoiler alert, if you want to tune in for that. This is going to be someone who's going to have a pretty good idea of, the behind the scenes stuff. So that's coming up during the bye week. All right. Coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast, the Giants are 2-7. The season, for all intents and purposes, is over. Even though they still got some games they have to play, including Dallas next week against whom, according to our friends at FanDuel, the Giants are a 15.5-point underdog. Ouch. So where did the Giants go from here? What's next? We'll talk about that coming up after this. Hey, Giant fans, snap into NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is super easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get started. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Hey, Giant fans, football season is well underway, and Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On NFL Kickoff Live. Each Friday, Locked On will go live at 2 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Hosts Tanitra Batiste, Jarvis Davis, and Kyle Krabs will break down every game on the NFL slate to get you ready for your team's matchup, your fantasy football lineups, your betting angles, and much more. Plus, get the in-depth local analysis from our stable of NFL hosts across the country who know these teams better than anybody else. Find Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On NFL YouTube channel. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Train on P-Train. And where do the Giants go from here? I mean, most of us would probably say we'd like to see them forfeit the rest of the games because what are their chances? I mean, they're just so banged up. They're just so dejected. Do they have any fight left? So where do they go from here? Well, the first thing, folks, is this team, and it might be too late for this. I don't know. But this team I don't know what their identity is. And until they figure that out, I know what they want to be, but what they want to be and what they are, it's just not happening. So they've really got to find an identity. They don't have a swagger to them. Look, for example, at the Raiders. After they won their game against the Giants, there were videos of them passing out cigars in the locker room. That's the Antonio Pierce, swagger. The Giants, I'm not sure what their identity is. Usually a team takes on the identity of its head coach. Brian Daboll tends to, be a fiery guy behind the scenes, but it's not translating over to the Giants, to the players for some reason. Whereas Daboll also tends to be kind of laid back, with the media, kind of vanilla, if you will. That's what's transferring over to this team, as I see it. So the Giants have to kind of figure out what they want to be and start working towards that. And I just don't know, between the injuries and between, what's going on, I don't know that they're going to be able to do with that this year. Now, a lot of people also say, oh my God, fire Joe Schoen, fire Brian Daboll. Folks, that's not going to happen. It's not. You cannot keep turning over the top leadership every 2 years and expect this team to build forward. All right. What has to happen for this team is Daboll and Schoen need to have an opportunity to bring more of their people into this locker room. Right. So I anticipate in the offseason, there's going to be a significant turnover in the locker room. There's going to be guys that, maybe they thought were part of the solution aren't going to be back. I suspect there's going to be a few coaches who are sent packing. I don't have to mention names. I think a lot of you can figure out who I'm talking about. And I think Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are going to sit down and say, okay, this is the type of guy we want on this team, and this is what we're going to get. So they need an opportunity to kind of rebuild the team the way they needed to. You look at last year, and you say, oh, wow, last year they were, they didn't have to do much. They were on the right track. Well, they couldn't do much. And we know now that that was a mirage. So this year, we're seeing what we probably should have seen last year. And, Schoen and Daboll, they've now had 2 years to get to know a lot of these guys who were carried over from last season. I think they're gonna be able to make, informed decisions regarding who they keep and who they don't keep moving forward. And they have to have that right, in my opinion, because again, constant turnover at the top is not good. Daboll and Shane kind of earned an opportunity to sit this, to keep going. Not necessarily this year, but last year, considering that they were able to have success despite having limited resources. They're going to get another opportunity next year to do this and to continue cleaning up that locker room and getting the guys that they feel best fit their system, that best complement the other parts that they have. So that's where I see this going in the off season. I know for some of you, that's not what you want to hear, but that's how it's going to be. I would be stunned if it's any other way. So, you can choose to watch if you want to. I know somebody wrote to me and said, hey, convince me why I should watch the Giants the rest of the way. That's not my job, folks. That's the other Pat's job, the male version that's actually on the Giants payroll. I am not on the Giants payroll. If you choose to watch, it's to kind of see, the remaining games. I mean, we get only 17 games a year, and we have to wait all year long for football. And I know the football isn't great, but it's still Giants, it's still the Giants. And, if you choose to watch, great. If you don't, I totally get it. I totally understand it. And again, I appreciate you listening to the Locked On Giants podcast, as well as checking out my work over on Giants Country. So that said, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Giants. Thank you so much. We will be back the rest of the week with all new episodes. I'm sure there's going to be a lot to talk about. We will see you again tomorrow, Giant fans.